So, on my ongoing quest to see why Bendy and the Ink Machine, among other internet titans, are so popular, I started a video series where I thoroughly analyze each chapter of this game. And after becoming incredibly frustrated with Chapter 1, I had low expectations for the sequel. However, when I did my initial playthrough, I enjoyed it. Like, I really liked it. I loved how in about 12 minutes it introduced combat, our first real character, teased future chapters, and used perspective to secretly guide the player. It felt right out of the beloved Mario Odyssey. And the very next day, I decided to play it again, just for the fun of it. And I didn't enjoy it nearly as much in the now 17 minutes it took me. I looked over my notes again, and just assumed I was tired the other day and I had poor judgment. Then I replayed to get footage, and it took me 34 minutes to beat, instead of the original 12. So what happened? Well, I can show you by analyzing Chapter 2 itself, by looking at how it used random chance and some absolutely obscure plot details to create a great or terrible experience for the player. Let's begin. The chapter starts out with some clever decisions by the developers, TheMeatly Games, in which first they draw attention to your weapon in the chapter, the axe, by having it have the sharpest contrasting color of anything you can currently see at the moment. After that, the player is given one way out by breaking these boards blocking a door, and light guides the player into this utility shed, where they are directed by light to this button and a recording. Then curiosity draws them to smash this Bendy cutout. Then after walking down a one-way hall, a mysterious figure lures them to this leftmost path, where the figure disappears. Most players assume they need to smash this Bendy cutout to proceed because the mysterious figure just dropped it off. Nothing seems to happen, so the player turns towards the light and sees another button. They turn into this area to see they need 3 buttons pressed to proceed, and here is where some brilliant design is shown. When the players turn around, they see the Bendy cutout has magically reappeared. This leads the players to attack it again and see this button on the wall. They press it, and walking to the first room lets them see this button, and eventually this final button from earlier. This experience gives players an aha moment every time they find a button, feeling clever they spotted all these themselves, even if they were guided the whole way. Or maybe things did not go as smoothly. Maybe you saw the first switch, then found an oddly camouflaged button on this machine, or found a switch in this corner when the light directs you in the complete opposite way, or after some complete insanity, find the final switch between one of 21 breakable boards that first has to be broken before you can see any possible indication that a switch is behind it. And even though this problem can be easily fixed by putting the first button behind an obvious board, this is not fun. Well, how does TheMeatly judge whether you are going to have a great or terrible experience in your exciting quest of pressing buttons? Well, random chance, of course, my second biggest problem from the first chapter. But after the controversy regarding the random chance in the first chapter, TheMeatly told his team, you know what, hear me out, guys. Now, we could give the players a great, thought-out experience, or we could put in the extra work to create a mismatched Frankenstein of great or terrible experiences. Fine. Let's just ignore this section, because even if you have to break 21 boards, this section is restricted to 4 small rooms. Next, light guides the player to their objective, and they are introduced to an incredibly dull combat section, which lacks really any depth. The player hits zombie-like ink creatures that attack from directly in front of the player, and after being hit once, they die. One clever thing, though, is that the source of these monsters that appear last lead the player to the next room, where you have to search for someone's keys that, quote,
They must have fallen in one of the garbage cans as I was making my rounds last week.
and later continues,
I just hope nobody tells Sammy, because if he finds out I lost my keys again, I'm out of here.
because losing your keys in a garbage can is just something we all do. Now someone may comment, why am I addressing this in an analysis of game design when this is clearly a narrative problem? Well, I do care about these things when the narrative can ruin the atmosphere, especially in a horror game, which tries to put you on the edge. But when told something this inhuman and absolutely absurd that breaks even the logic of the universe the player finds themselves in, they are instantly reminded they are playing a video game. And because of the pure brilliance by TheMeatly, the locations of these said keys is also randomized among 10 different trash cans. Now, why is this a bad thing, you may ask? Well, because the trash cans are all around the complex, and even though using trial and error to search for the keys is a chore in itself, the main reason this is terrible because it makes any speedruns of this game nearly all chance-based. Now, why should that matter? Well, people may disagree with this point, but before I tell you why speedrunning matters for this game, there needs to be some general background information shared. There's a bi-yearly speedrunning convention called AGDQ, Awesome Games Done Quick, which has raised over $10 million by having people donate for runners to speed through a game. And if you've been on the internet for a while, chances are you've heard of it once or twice. Now, even if we ignore the fact that both instances of random chance so far have caused a worse player experience, with Bendy and the Ink Machine arguably being the most popular game on the internet, don't you have some sort of responsibility as a developer to make it runnable in order to help charities? And I just named AGDQ, but there's also ASM, ESR, and thousands of independent streamers who run for various charities. The random chance has made this game so terrible to speedrun that in 2 hours, I have ranked 5th place in the world on Chapter 2. Yep, your average Joe with no speedrunning experience is in the top 5 of the world because professional speedrunners would not dare to touch this game with a 10-foot pole. And that is why having keys appear in one of 10 trash cans is terrible. But wait, there's more. There is also a chance that Sammy thought about throwing beige-colored sandbags in the trash with the keys, making them unnecessarily harder to spot, making the experience even worse for no discernible reason. After finding the keys, we access an audio recording telling a code to eventually open this door. And you guessed it, the code is unnecessarily randomized. And the best part about this is they made poor, Aaron Landon record more lines just to make this game worse. But why? What would you, just why? Okay, I have been hating on this game's random chance system for almost the entire video, but believe it or not, there is a reason for the random chance. It is to create variety each time you replay the game. Well, that actually makes perfect sense. It's just like in Dear Esther, where they would randomly add ghosts in the background or different creepy objects in recordings each time you play. None of these things affected the gameplay, or speedrunning for that matter, but it created a unique experience where, for example, 2 kids on the playground could be talking about the game. Well, I don't know why I'm using 2 kids on a playground because kids never play M-rated games. They would talk about Dear Esther, and one of them would say, "Man, all those ghosts were terrifying." And the other kid would say, "What ghosts? There was only one ghost." Whoa, that's pretty creepy. Hey man, say, the best part about Chapter 2 is when you have to backtrack to the very first room to find the keys Sammy dropped in the trash. No, they were in the projector room. Whoa, creepy. I just don't see how in any world you could find that conversation on the playground about such a menial task in Bendy and the Ink Machine is worth potentially ruining the player's gameplay experience. Like I said, Dear Esther had random chance, but none of it affected the gameplay experience. I can't hate this chapter too terribly though, because after the code, the random chance ends and the chapter gets better for it. For example, when you enter the code, you have to first turn on the projector upstairs in the other room and dash downstairs to enter this musical code. A proper non-chance based challenge. And one cool thing to note is that the more you fail at this, the more Bendy cutouts move to the opposite floor until you get an achievement, which is almost a nice quote-unquote reward for struggling players. Then, you enter Sammy's one-room sanctuary, which contains a single ink valve. Back to my point about unrealistic things in universe pull you out of the experience. Then after pressing that, more of the same enemies from earlier are faced, and although the room is slightly different, the battle is the same, with every enemy dying in one hit, and again, attacking from the front. Next, you need to turn a valve in the recently opened infirmary? Back to my point about unrealistic things in universe pull you out of the experience, to then open a door to the main ink valve, and finally, escape. Yet alas, the player hath been bamboozled, and is kidnapped by the shadowy figure from earlier before they are able to escape. Here, we meet the previously teased Sammy Lawrence, and after about 2 minutes of monologuing, the player escapes from Bendy himself by first again attacking these ink monsters. Then, a proper chase scene ensues, where the player is cleverly guided by light again to the exit. A small twist that does not need to be spoiled here ensues, and the chapter ends. So, this chapter was a mixed bag. You could have a great experience of clever design which teaches without words, or, more likely, you'll have a mediocre experience, or even end up hating this chapter for terrible design. All results of random chance. So, I shall give it an appropriate score reflecting that. It is a 9 out of 10, nearly a masterpiece. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, consider subscribing by clicking my logo here to be notified of when Chapter 3's analysis releases, along with an upcoming video of why Five Nights at Freddy's, Undertale, and this game among others have become so popular. Regardless of your choice, have a wonderful day, and I will catch you all next week.